The entire NBA world is in chaos. A player just got traded, and suddenly his entire life changes overnight. But what really happens behind the scenes? Shams breaks the news, fans debate the winners and losers, but nobody's talking about the cold reality of all of this. When players are moved like chess pieces, thrown into a new city with zero warning, zero choice, and no stability. One day they're celebrating a win with their teammates, and the next they're on a flight to a city they've never lived in, scrambling to find a home, wondering what's happening to their family, and sometimes even questioning if their career is over. This is the dark side of the NBA that nobody talks about, and today we're going to break it all down. Most people think that all NBA players live glamorous lives, huge mansions, fancy cars, and multi-million-dollar contracts, and for the most part, it is pretty great. But what people never talk about is the dark side of all of this. Getting traded can be brutal and messy, and for most players, it's entirely out of their control. 1 second you're on the court warming up for a game, and a staffer taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, we need to talk." And just like that, you're gone. No warning, no heads up, just a plane ticket and a new jersey waiting for you in another city. The media finds out before you do. Your phone starts blowing up, and you're just standing there wondering what's happening. By the time you can even process what's going on, your locker's being emptied, trainers are packing your belongings into boxes, some of your teammates are shocked, others felt like they saw it coming. Buying a house in your old city doesn't even change anything. The mortgage still has to be paid while you move somewhere else. Your kids have to change schools, again. Your families have to drop everything to figure out where they're going to go next. And oftentimes you don't even have time to say goodbye to your teammates because you got to be on a flight that night. Lonzo Ball once found out that he was being traded by the Lakers while scrolling through Twitter. This isn't a normal job. It's a business where teams can trade you like an asset. And for the guys who don't have long-term contracts, they have no security. And if you think it's easier for superstar players, well, that's not always the case. There are trades, and then there are trades that shake the entire NBA to its core. We're talking about Luka Doncic, a 25-year-old MVP-level superstar, one of the most dangerous offensive forces in the NBA. He took his team to the finals last year, and he was traded overnight. And the craziest part, he didn't even ask for it. No trade request, no public frustration, just a single phone call from the Mavs front office, and Luka was gone. So why did Dallas trade Luka? From what we can tell, it was personal. After the news dropped, the Mavericks front office went on the offensive and began to leak stories about their concerns with Luka's conditioning and leadership. Despite one of the best starts to a career from any NBA player ever, they decided to cut ties with Doncic instead of offering him a supermax $350 million contract extension. Superstars like Luka don't just get traded like that. And Dallas almost certainly didn't even get the best deal possible. In fact, they didn't even try to get the best deal possible. If you are trading away a player, a superstar, who could dominate the league for the next decade, you would think that a team like the Mavericks would hold out for a king's ransom. Young stars, multiple first-round picks, a chance to rebuild for the future. But instead, they took a 30-plus-year-old, injury-prone Anthony Davis and a single first-round pick. Now, Davis is a great player himself. He's all NBA, he's a future Hall of Famer, he's going to be all defense. But there are zero teams in the NBA who would rather have him than a 25-year-old Luka Doncic. Except for the Mavericks, apparently. This wasn't just a blockbuster trade. It has the potential to be a franchise-altering mistake. And for the Lakers, it's a dream scenario. They just landed a generational superstar to take over the mantle when LeBron eventually retires. They've gone from Kobe to LeBron to Luka. And for the Mavericks, they might have just made the worst trade in the history of the NBA. So what happens? The trade is official. You're headed to a new team. Now what? Before you even have time to process the trade, your phone is already ringing. Your agent's working out the logistics, figuring out your contract situation, your relocation plans, and when you need to report to your new team. He's also dealing with the media storm because the moment the trade is announced, reporters, analysts, and social media will be blowing up everywhere. Some players don't even hear it from their agent first or the team. Twitter breaks the news before anyone else. And yes, this happens a lot. Some players find out about the trade while they're traveling or even while they're in the game, so they have to legitimately leave the arena. And that's that. You don't even pack up your own things. The team sends trainers, assistants, or even security to gather your stuff and ship it out to you. So you might not even get your clothes and shoes and some of your personal items right away. Your flight lands, you step out of the plane, and suddenly you're in a brand new city where you don't know anyone except maybe some of your new teammates. The team will set you up in a hotel, and most NBAs have partnerships with 5-star hotels, so they'll get you in a nice luxury suite. Again, it's not like these guys ain't getting paid. But some players stay for weeks, even months, especially if they're still figuring out whether this trade is now their permanent home or if it's just something that's temporary. And at the same time, you're juggling 100 different things at once. You're finding a home. You're enrolling your kids in a new school. You're adjusting to a new city. You're learning your new teammates and your new team system. Some players move enough that their families even stay based in a different city entirely. And while the entire world expects you to perform immediately, you simply have to adjust. One day you could be the face of a franchise, and the next day you're expected to drop 30 for a team that you've never played for before. And the fans don't really care that you just got here. We're going to start debating whether or not the trade was a mistake or a franchise-altering move. Some players thrive, and others crumble. Because in the NBA, there's no time to settle in. You either adapt or you get left behind. Getting traded once is stressful, but getting traded multiple times in a single day, that's just nasty business, man. Just ask Dennis Schroder. This man went from Golden State to Miami to Utah to Detroit in under 18 hours. He probably had no clue where he was even going to sleep that night. Imagine trying to process that you've been traded, and before you even land in your new city, you've been traded again. It's like getting a new job, and when you're on your way to work, HR calls you and says, actually, you know what? We're sending you to a different company. And this isn't just unique to Schroder. Every year, dozens of players get thrown into trade packages as salary fillers. They're not even the main trade piece. They're just a contract to make numbers work. Schroder himself described this whole system in one brutal sentence. It's like modern slavery. Think about that. Even with millions of dollars in the bank, NBA players have zero control over their careers and their futures at times. One minute you might be signing a lease in San Francisco, and the next you're waking up in Detroit with no idea where you're going to live. In a league where stability means everything, most players simply will never have it. It's one thing to be unexpectedly traded, but oftentimes players get traded and immediately cut. One moment, they've got a spot on an NBA roster, and the next, they're just sitting at home hoping that somebody calls. And for many players, this can mark the end of their careers in the NBA entirely. NBA players are humans. Yeah, they're getting paid really well, but they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. And getting traded doesn't always feel that way. They have families, kids, homes, friendships, and one phone call later, all of that can change. Some players just can't handle it, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically. It can wreck confidence, ruin careers, and make players question if the NBA is even for them, if it's even worth it. Imagine having to leave behind your friends, teammates, and everything that you built overnight just because someone in the front office decided that you weren't worth it anymore. For guys who've been traded multiple times, it becomes exhausting. And for many, it's the moment that they realize that this league is just a business. NBA trades aren't just notifications from Shams and ESPN. They change people's lives. Some players get lucky and they land on a contender and get a shot at a ring, or they go to a new city that they've always wanted to live. Meanwhile, others vanish into irrelevance. And oftentimes, they never see it coming. In the NBA, loyalty does not exist. It's a business. A cold one. Hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments below. What's the most shocking trade you've ever seen?